Greetings, dear listeners, and welcome to a new episode of our Giant Leap podcast, presented by the Diversity and Gender Equality Project Group of the Space Generation Advisory Council. Our Giant Leap discusses diversity, equity, and inclusion issues within the international space industry. I have a dream. It was in 1963 when the late Martin Luther King gave his famous speech, dreaming of a future where racism is a myth of the past, an evil long gone and forgotten. Now, 61 years later, I too have dreamed. I dream of a world where my daughter can study whatever she wants and not be pushed and forced by society into one field or another. I dream of a world where my son can apply for the job he wants without being asked about his nationality. I dream of a world where space is not strategic battleground for countries with power, but rather a common heritage and an opportunity to explore and enjoy the wonders of this amazing cosmos. Will my dream ever come true? I don't know, but I certainly hope so. But what I know is that it won't be truly fulfilled until every child with a disability can also dream, can also be whoever their heart desires, be it a doctor, an artist, a race car driver, and why not, an astronaut. Dear listeners, my name is Amin, and in this episode of the Our Giant Leap podcast, we welcome a dreamer and a history maker. Please welcome Tomas Ducai, the first wheelchair analog astronaut. With Toma, we will dive into his remarkable journey, how it started and how it led him to make history. Thomas, it's our pleasure to have you with us today.
Hi, Amin. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for invitation. I'm very looking forward to this episode and to talk to you and the audience.
So, Toma, let's start our conversation by knowing you better. Who is Tomas Ducai? What is your story? And how did it lead you to become the first wheelchair analog astronaut?
Yes, sure. So my name is Tomas Ducai, and I am originally from Slovakia. I was born in the eastern part of Slovakia. However, I am now living for more than 20 years already in the beautiful capital of Austria, Vienna. It's a really nice city and also a very good adapted for wheelchair users, I have to say. Here I have completed my primary school and my grammar school, and now I am studying molecular biology in a master's level at the University of Vienna. Besides that, I am also studying teaching studies with the subject biology, psychology and philosophy, and Slovak language. My passion for space science and astronomy sparked during my high school, where I attended an elective subject called astronomy, where I've also graduated in. Since then I am truly interested in astronomy and space sciences. On one hand, in the field of space biosciences, I would say. So I'm trying to mingle my interest in biology or my professional background in molecular biology with space sciences. But on the other hand, as being an active wheelchair user, I'm also very into the topic of inclusion and diversity in space sciences, where I'm also advocating for it, as it is really close to my heart. As I'm now trying for more than 2 years, being active in these fields, I have experienced already a lot in one and other field. We'll be looking forward to talk and to tell you more about my experience, especially then as the first wheelchair using analog astronaut.
Well, one thing that you said during your introduction that caught my attention, and I guess it's also interesting for our listeners to know, is that you mentioned that Vienna is very adapted to wheelchair users. How does a city that is adapted for wheelchair users looks like? Does it have specific facilities? Does it have a specific architecture? Can you tell us more about that?
So I think the reason for this is that Austria really has a good social structure and cares about people with disabilities. So a lot or majority of buildings outside are adapted for wheelchair users, and also fortunately also in the educational sector, like within schools, it gets better and better. And there are a lot of schools that are already adapted for people with special needs or especially wheelchair users. So many schools have already elevators and also facilities, say toilets for especially able people, for wheelchair users, which is really nice. Then also the public transport. I think I never experienced a city with such a good public transport as Vienna has. It's really, really accessible. And yeah, last but not least, also the sector of health and hospitals is very good established in Austria. So I would say it's really, really a convenient city to live in, not only from the educational perspective, also from a standpoint of universities where I'm also now studying, but also like considering the leisure time and all the other stuff that people in general need to feel good in a city.
Thank you, Toma, for bringing the image of what a city that is adapted for people with disability might look like. I think that's very important. As a species, the humanity is trying to go to the Mars, to Moon, and it's important to think that this is a collective human endeavor. It's not for one class or one society, but for all of humanity. So building and thinking about architectures that are friendly for people with different backgrounds, whether it is like from cultural point of view or from physical and health point of view, is really important. And one more thing that Thomas, you mentioned during your brief introduction that I found really interesting is that you said that you managed to keep your interest in astronomy and the space sciences while working on your professional background as a molecular biology student. How does that look like? Is it easy? Is it easy to keep both of them? Is it sometimes hard? Tell us more about that.
So I have to say, trying to mingle my interests and my professional background in molecular biology or in biology in general with astronomy is a lot of fun, but it's not that easy as one would think. And it arises also, like, on the one hand, because of my interest in both of the fields, and I've decided to study biology as I'm really fascinated in nature. However, people told me that, yeah, when you're not going to study physics or astronomy, you can forget about your interest in space sciences, which is not true actually. And also for me, as a specially able person, where also traveling is connected to much more logistical planning than for everybody else, for healthy people, I would say. I took the advantage during the pandemic to attend a lot of webinars, which have been held in an online way in these fields, as especially the field of space biosciences is not very well, unfortunately, developed in Central Europe, where I live. So I tried to attend various webinars in this sector. And back then, I also joined SJC, where I am part of two working groups. One is the Diversity and Gender Equality Project Group, and the other is Space Medicine and Life Sciences. And I have joined also several other institutions and organizations where I was then invited to their conferences and yearly meetings, annual meetings. For example, I was I've taken part in the annual meeting of the analysis working groups of NASA Gene Lab. in Washington last year, where I was glad to learn a lot. And then also this year I participated in a huge conference about space sciences in general in Florida in the US. However, I've also taken part as a speaker in a lot of conferences and events related to space in Europe. I was in Luxembourg at the Summer Space Festival. I was invited in a festival in Ibiza, and I'm also board member of the so-called Community of Human Analog Space Missions. As I back then when the campaign of the per astronaut or the astronaut selection of the European Space Agency has been announced, I have contacted the organizers, and they've explained me in a very, very positive and supporting and encouraging way why maybe it's not the time now, emphasizing that it's not now the time, but maybe in future, I hope, to bring wheelchair using people in space. And then I made a research on my own, and then I have come up with the topic that there are simulated space missions called analog space missions, where I got really interested into that, and this is a really, really great passion of mine nowadays.
That's actually perfect transition for our next topic. Tomas, you just finished an analog mission, and you are now the first wheelchair user analog astronaut. Tell us about the mission. Tell us about the story behind. How did you end up there, and what did you learn? How does it feel to be an analog astronaut?
Thank you very much. I mean, yes, it was really a blast, and it was really exciting, and I'm really honored that I have been selected, being the first specially abled, or not specially abled and wheelchair using analog per astronaut in an analog space mission. It was a year ago where I met the organizers and the founders of the analog space habitat Lunares, which is located in Poland, during a workshop organized by the already mentioned Community of Human Analog Space Missions. So maybe to explain, analog space missions in general try to simulate the processes during a real analog mission, not only the processes but also the environment. And for this, there are a lot of simulated or analog space habitats worldwide. They have more or less two types of foci that they can have. They can focus on the simulation of the environment of an extraterrestrial object. Most often it is the moon or Mars, or they can focus more on the isolation part, like how it is to be really isolated with a couple of other people in the simulated space habitat. And Lunaris is mingling the both aspects, but mostly focusing on the isolation part. So yes, and it is what's special about Lunaris is that it's for now the first and the only habitat that has conducted missions with specially abled people. First one was in 2017, if I'm not mistaken, with a blind, especially abled analog per astronaut. And yeah, I have met them during the workshop 1 year ago, where I found out that there is such an existing habitat that is offering such missions for specially abled people, and I immediately got interested in. And they told me that sooner or later they will conduct a mission also with a wheelchair user, and if I would like, then I can apply. And the application process took a long time. Also, that the Lunaris have had to finish last details in the setup to really be wheelchair accessible. But finally, my dream came true, and I participated in the analog space mission called Pegasus mission for the first time as a first wheelchair user in March this year. And it was really, really exciting as we were like 6 people who never met before, isolated from the outside world for 2 weeks, simulating a real space mission in this habitat with a lot of activities. We had research project, we had the simulated extravehicular activities, called EVAs, where everyone had during the mission and also during the EVA a special role. So it was a really tight and intense time, but it was just wonderful.
Honest, what I could learn from your story is that once there is a will, there is a way to make things happen. And this goes both into personal perspective and into societal perspective. And what I mean by this is you wanted to be an astronaut and you had the will, the passion, and the drive to go for that. So you kept looking and looking into the opportunity showed itself and then you took it. And also, this proves that there is the will by organizations to make the space industry more inclusive. I mean, a lot of the time in this podcast, we talk about how to make it more, about the things that we should do and the things that can be improved. But it's also important to recognize the things that already exist, the people that are working to make the space industry more inclusive. And for that, let's celebrate all the people who participated in the organization of these missions, from the crew member to the missions architect, to everybody who had anything to do with that. We want to thank you on behalf of the Our Giant Leap podcast team for your amazing work. So, Thomas, my next question will be, how does a day of an analog astronaut looks like? What do you do when you wake up, till you sleep? How do you interact with one another? How does your day look like?
Yes, sure. So we had really planned days, as it is really on also a real space mission, or at least at the ISS. So we woke up and we were monitored from the medical perspective. So there was a med check directly in the morning where we had to measure, so the medical officer measured our blood pressure and pulse and temperature and oxygen saturation in blood. And we have had to enter our sleep data. We had some smartwatches where we, like, the sleeping duration of our sleep has been monitored. And in the morning we had to type in the sleep data and sleep quality into an app. And then it was the breakfast, and the dietary restrictions were interesting. Like the breakfast was we were able to consume normal food, but then for lunch and dinner we have had to eat freeze-dried food, like astronaut food. So this was also part of the simulation. As you can imagine, it was not comparable to fresh and normal food, but it was eatable, and we had a lot of spices there, so we pimped our foods as much as we could. And in the beginning of the mission, we got a delivery with fresh food, so we had a good mix, and I think it was not that bad in the end, as we thought it would be. And after the breakfast, after each meal, we had to put our exact composition of our food into an app, which monitored our calories. So this was also funny to monitor how much do we eat. And after this, we have had to fill out a lot of questionnaires. As you can imagine, such a mission is also, from the research perspective, monitored by a lot of researchers, especially focusing on the psychology within our mission. So the whole forenoon was packed with filling up questionnaires, and also with physical training. We had to do some physical training every day, or like every second day, also simulating the physical training on the ISS. and during lunchtime we had the lunch, and before that we had, which was also kind of a research project in the end, a meditation, a group meditation, which was really really good, and we had really time to relax. So one of my favorite parts of the day. And in the afternoon, either we have conducted our research project that have been assigned to us. For example, I was the biolab officer in this simulated space mission, and in a simulated space habitat. There was a biolab, and as I'm studying molecular biology, I did some experiments. Or we had every second day we had an EVA, so extravehicular activity, where part of the crew were the analog astronauts going like outside on the moon in the simulated extraterrestrial place or surface of the moon, and the other part of the crew gave instructions as being the habitat commanders, so-called. And this took a lot of time, 3-4 hours every EVA, or like we had 3-4 hours the other day to conduct our experiments. And in the end, there was like again the dinner, and again evening math checks, and yeah. But we also had some time to relax too. So I think it was a planned day, but really really diverse, and I really enjoyed the days there.
So, Toma, now when you look back to your experience as an analog astronaut, the 2 weeks that you spent with your crewmates and everything, what is a moment that stands out? Something that you remember that gives you burst of strong feelings. Did you go through something like that during your mission?
So there are a lot of feelings in that. It's very hard to pick one, as already the whole mission for me is really exceptional, as being the first wheelchair user, and really being able to contribute to the equality and the inclusion within space sciences. But like, if I have to choose one moment from the mission, I think one characteristic, one property that was really, really crucial during the mission was the social understanding and the empathy. So it was really crucial to have a good group cohesion. As for example, one of the day, it was the middle of the mission, we had a power outage, which we hadn't expected in the mission in the habitat, and it was not simulated, so it was really by chance, which really lasted a long time, for 5 hours. And the mission architecture is special, so that if there is no power, no electricity, there are for sure no lights, but also as water pumps are pumped by like are dependent on electricity, we haven't had also water, so it got cold and we haven't had water for quite a while. So this was a moment where we, or at least I, really have had to rely on us, and it was a funny moment, where I think the most crucial point was that we as a crew kept calm, thankfully, and managed the situation very well. I think because of our good group cohesion in the end, I would say.
I think that's such an amazing story. I think that it's really important to emphasize on how important a human collaboration is. In the end, space is a collective human endeavor. The one thing that we won't run out of on Mars, on the moon, is not air, not technology, not anything else, but it's just like knowing that there is the another human being next to us, that on whom we can rely, and whom can help us. This moments where the beauty of the humanity stands out, that we see that we are not separated by color, not separated by culture, ethnicity, or anything else, that we are just connected. And it's very, very important, this human cohesion. We need more of that.
It is, but like also from my second maybe little point is that as the habitat was really good, developed and adapted for wheelchair user, some moments were also still very tough as the shelves were quite very high, and maybe also from the standpoint as a wheelchair user, I felt really lucky that also my crew accepted me as being there as a wheelchair user, and they were really like they provided me help, and they were really supportive. So yeah, I would like to thank my group, my crew here, my crewmates, who's really supported me throughout the mission.
Wow, it seems like you guys really created very strong bonds during this mission. And I bet that you are still in contact with one another, no?
Yes, yeah, we do.
Thank you, Thomas, for clarifying to us what an analog astronaut mission looks like and sharing with us all your amazing stories and all the very strong feelings that you had. It was really interesting to know. So, Thomas, my next question will be more general. In the Our Giant Leap podcast, our aim, our goal is to make the space industry more inclusive, more tolerant, more accepting for everybody. What do you think is missing right now in the scene, in the space industry scene, for people with disabilities to be more confident applying for this, applying and following their dream to get into the space industry, whether it's as engineers, as scientists, as economists, as lawyers? What do you think is the missing piece here to make the space industry more comfortable for people with special needs?
This is a really huge question, and I think I am not able to cover all the aspects of the question in my answer. But one thing that I've noticed is that there are opportunities also for specially able people to get into the space industry and getting active, participating in projects or supporting teams. But these opportunities are not being really communicated in the most effective way, I would say. So I would say a lot of specially abled people are very interested in space and very active and would like to get into it. And this was also in the beginning what I've struggled with, that I didn't know where to start because there was no obvious opportunity listed anywhere. But there are, especially contributing in research projects. There is a lot of international teams are doing their research remotely, so this is absolutely possible to contribute from wherever you are if you are able to use your computer. So but the next point I would say is really also your interest. If you are showing your willingness and your interest, this is really crucial to being considered within advertised opportunities. But but not least, I think many organizations, many institutions that are not offering yet any opportunities in the space sector should be aware of the fact that with promoting inclusion and diversity in the space sector, you're not only promoting access to people who are already disabled, but what is also part of the philosophy of Lunaris, I would say, is they're including people with special abilities in their missions on purpose. Because you have to imagine the transport to the moon, or especially to the Mars, is long and lasts long and is coupled to a lot of risks, health risks. So I think it's really meaningful to be prepared for every scenario or a lot of scenarios from the perspective of health, to be able to deal with emergencies, health emergencies, and developed disabilities, let's say, in space. So also from the scientific and research perspective, it is really important to collaborate and to include in your research and the everyday life in the space science sector people with disabilities, as they really can contribute to the elevation of knowledge in this field.
So what I get from your answer, Toma, is that there is the opportunities, there is the people that they are very interested on pursuing these opportunities, but what is missing is the link in between, how to get people who are interested in the opportunities to know that these opportunities exist in the first place. So it's mainly a problem of communication and creating the links so that people know that there is opportunities for them out there and there is a lot of things for them to do. It's just like they don't know that they exist. So the aim will be to work on that problem. To conclude this episode, there is a lot of people, hopefully a lot of children listening to this, or a lot of people with interest in the space industry, a lot of people who might have a disability, a lot of people who might have a disability that nobody knows about because most of the disabilities are not seen directly. What do you have to tell them to encourage them to pursue their passion and continue and follow their dreams and go into the space industry?
I think it's really, really important to follow your interests, your dreams, as it was with me with astronomy. As I have decided to study biology, a lot of people told me, yeah, you can forget about your interest in astronomy. You can't get any more into this field if you're not studying physics or astronomy. And I didn't believe them. I believed I can somehow. And here I am. So follow your passion and also be brave. I've contacted a lot of people to ask about opportunities, being aware that I'm a wheelchair user. And a lot of people have supported my interest and opened very important doors for me, which I'm very thankful to. And it was also like this with my Lunaris mission in the end, which I'm very, very glad about. So being interested, being brave is really important. And maybe I would like to conclude with the famous quote of a really famous astronomer and cosmologist who was also specially abled, Stephen Hawking. He once said, however difficult life may seem, there's always something you can do and succeed at. It matters that you just don't give up.
It's a wonderful way, Thomas, to conclude this episode. The words of Stephen Hawking rings true. There is definitely something out there for every one of us that we can succeed at. In the end, it all adds up to this. We should not give up. We should not just surrender, and we should keep following our dreams. Thank you, Thomas, for sharing all your stories with us. It was such a wonderful moment.
Thank you, Ami.
And with this, we conclude another episode of the Our Giant Leap podcast. But don't you worry, dear listeners, because our journey through space shall continue. Until then, keep shining. The Our Giant Leap podcast is brought to you by the Diversity and Gender Equality Project Group of the Space Generation Advisory Council. You can interact directly with us on the Diversity and Gender Equality Project Group social media and leave feedback or advice from your side. Also, let us know, who would you like us to interview next? Thank you all for listening. I'm your host, Amin, signing off.